We had the strategic goal of getting eSAF to the market as rapidly as possible. Of course, that takes a long time to develop a project and construct a project, typically 7+ years. To make eSAF, you can't retrofit an existing refinery. You have to actually start from, greenfield. And this is where Sky Power came in and said, hey, because these projects are so different, let's form an industry organization where the different players in the value chain are together and finding common ground on how to get these eSAF projects to financial close, to FID and financial close.
And FID is a big part of what Project Sky Power is focused on. And there's a specific target around trying to get the first of those projects to FID by the end of this year. How feasible do you think this is? And what factors could make or break that timeline?
So I think it's feasible. We still have 6 months left in the year. And it all comes down to offtake agreements. If we had a long-term offtake agreement in hand, then we could be at FID pretty immediately after that.
From your perspective, what is currently the single biggest barrier to scaling eSAF production in Europe?
The technology is there, right? So that's not necessarily an issue. I think it's very expensive to develop a project, something on the order of, potentially 60 million euros just to get to FID. And so that a big challenge there is, getting the funding to do the development work. Some of the countries in Europe have long permitting timelines. Like we just received our permit in Denmark, it took 3 years. So that's a little bit of a challenge. And then I think depending on where eSAF projects are located, access to biogenic CO2 is a little bit challenging, but I do believe people are figuring that out. So that's probably not the biggest barrier. I think really the biggest barrier comes down to just having that money for development. And then after that, it's securing the long-term offtake agreement to have a bankable project.
In the recent months, there has been some pushback on the EU's 2030 eSAF sub-mandate, some of it coming from airlines. Do you believe these concerns are valid, and how would a shift in policy affect Arcadia's project pipeline?
Well, we heard clearly from DG Move and others that the mandates are not going away. I'm sure that the fuel distributors would like to see that because they're the ones having to pay the penalty and they're not the ones building eSAF projects. But again, if we look at the big picture and what's right for climate change and the environment and flying in a carbon neutral way, eSAF really is the only solution. It's the most environmentally friendly in terms of CO2 emission reduction, also other particulate matter reduction. And so, yes, there's a premium to pay in the early years for this type of product, but if we don't get started and can't, progress down the learning curve, then we're never going to have a chance to get lower costs in the future.